Labor Talks was John DeRosier, recorded at Chippewa Valley Community Television in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Good day, this is Labor Talks. My name is John DeRosier, and today's special guest is Rich Spindler, President of the Eau Claire Area School District. Rich, welcome to Labor Talks.
Hey, John. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay. And I do have a whole bunch of questions for you.
All right.
Okay.
Good. Let's go for it.
First of all, why did you run for the Eau Claire Area School Board?
Yeah, so I ran, almost 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. And, I have a daughter in the schools, so I'm very interested in what's happening in the schools, in the school district. So that's one reason right there, being a parent. And I'm excited always when a parent says they're going to run, to be more involved in their district. I was already involved in many ways. I was in the Parent-Teacher Advisory Council, Parent Advisory Council, and some other committees, so I was kind of interested in the issues that were going on back then already. So it just seemed natural to run and do that, and just be more involved and see how I could serve the district some more.
Now, you've been on the school board for a short time now, just a couple of years, okay?
Right.
Why did you run for the president of the school board?
Well, you really don't run for president. It's like, do the rest of the board members choose you? It's not an election. You don't run for president. Everyone's an equal on the board, and they choose their president to manage some of the things. And, I guess you'd have to ask each board member why, and I was nominated and they chose me, but I just feel like maybe I have the right personality to keep people running together and moving together. So I hope that's the case, at least.
And I'll just bet it was unanimous.
It was. I was the only one nominated, and yes, then I was.
As a matter of fact, you pointed that out to me one time.
Well, I think you asked me how it went, so yes, right.
Okay. Now, as president of the school board and as a member of the school board, what have you accomplished, and what do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, when I first got on, one thing I was very interested in was just changing the kind of the snow days policy for teacher employees. I felt like it wasn't flexible enough for teachers, and I did ask and have that changed with some discussion with the board. So I'm kind of proud of that, to help them out with that. Since then, we through Act 10 and other things, we've been forced actually to change, like health benefits, for example, with employees. That was a requirement essentially. And one good thing that came out of that, though, there are a lot of problems with more expenses on some employees. For other employees, it actually helped them. We were able to provide more benefits for like food service workers and stuff. So we changed that policy and the benefits for them a little bit. So that actually helped them a little bit. Overall, I know it did hurt a lot of other employees, but that was actually something positive that came out of that. Besides that, as president, my goal really is to have a board that is professional, works together well, can come to consensus. We won't always agree, we won't always vote the same on everything, but at least it's not acrimonious, and we have kind of an efficient and a process where everyone gets their questions answered and they have enough information to vote. And I feel like I'm working on that well. So that would be a major accomplishment, to have a board work well together forward rather than fighting all the time.
Do you think it's going to be difficult getting them to work together, or?
No, I don't think so. I find this board is really, for the most part, pleasant to work with. There's always issues. Some issues we're going to disagree on. And
that's normal.
And right. And as long as when that happens, people are courteous and walk away like they were heard, and in the next issue we still can talk to each other, then that's a great accomplishment. I feel like our board's pretty good at that.
Now, currently, is the school board experiencing a decreased budget, and will it be looking at decreased budgets in the future?
Yeah, currently, this year we certainly had a decrease in state aid. So we should be clear on what we mean by budget. So, the state sets the revenue limit for us, and that was increased like 1% from last year, maybe not even inflation, right? And that's been kind of the trend the past few years. In fact, we had a big decrease, a few years ago in that revenue limit. That tells us how much money we can get. And then what the state does is it says, you get this much of that state aid, and the rest is property taxes. So what they did this year was, okay, we'll increase it maybe by inflation, not quite, but we're going to decrease the amount of state aid you get. So that forces property tax rates to go up a little bit. We really have very little control on that. So so that's really what's set for us. So that sets our budget. That's 85% of our budget right there. And the rest is fees or maybe grants we get from the federal or state government. So that's how it is this year. We're basically holding our own with that. For the future, I am worried a little bit because there is talk about expanding the voucher program throughout the state, which would basically mean less money for other education, meaning public institutions. I don't have a crystal ball, but if that happens, I do worry that then public education, public schools would get less money. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, because if that happens, point blank, what you're looking at is money going from public schools to voucher schools, and that money that's taken away from you won't be made up.
That would.
Period.
Yes, others would argue differently. Those who support those programs, they say, "Oh, that comes from a different pot." I disagree. The state allocates so much for education, and some of it will go to vouchers and some to public schools. So.
Now, I've spoken with some teachers off the record, and they're not exactly thrilled with what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on teachers' morale?
I don't have a great feel for that. We are doing surveys. The administration, our superintendent has started that, and I think she's had, one or two so far. I guess we've had one. Another one's coming soon. On those kinds of issues. I wouldn't be surprised if there's low morale. I mean, if you think about Act 10, they felt like they were hit financially with that. And then you've got all these other initiatives from the state that are being pushed down, more work on them. So you've got higher workload and hit financially, at least in benefits. So, I would, if I was an employee and that happened to me, I'd feel the same way.
Okay.
Projecting. You think about, we got to implement all these different tests, these new tests. We've got educator effectiveness, which makes teachers nervous a little bit. It's something new. So, yeah, I can see that.
Now, being on the school board and being president of the school board, you have to take an overall view, an objective view of the whole picture.
Mm-hmm.
So, having said that, I'd like to ask you this question. What have unions done to help you as a school as the school board president and the teachers?
Well, I think the union role is particularly important in terms of having a voice for employees, a single voice for employees. Without that, you can do surveys and get voices, but it sometimes I think can be hard to discern what that is. And I think a single strong voice from a union is very helpful to get feedback. So in that way, I think it's helpful for both the administration and myself on that and for the board.
Do you find union representation do unions understand the position that you're in, and do they want to work with you because, in spite of these decreased revenues? In others, are they cooperating?
Yeah, I feel like they are, for the most part. I don't actually deal with the unions as much. It's mostly through administration.
Yep.
They meet with administration and meet and confer and in other kinds of discussions. And so it's mostly through them, not directly with me. But when I talk to superintendent and I run across employees or the union president or something, it sounds like there's a good relationship going on there. So and I hope that's true, and I hope that continues.
Have you had any past experience working with unions? Have you ever been a union member?
Oh, yeah. I worked many years ago. I was in Madison. I was part of that union there. And then I also was a faculty member at Bemidji State University. And that's been one of the oldest faculty unions in the nation, and it's called MINSCU. And so I was a member of them for 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. Now, obviously, I support unions. I mean, the name of the program is Labor Talks.
Labor Talks, right.
Okay.
Right.
We have been described as thugs. And I resent that. I really do resent
Well,
that.
that's a derogatory term, period.
You think it's accurate?
No, of course not.
Well, I have to ask it.
You know, a thug brings into mind like a gangster going out and beating people up to get their way. And, you know, that's not the case. So.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We need to get this out to the public, because there are people who actually think that we're communists or we're thugs, etc. I've been called that, so. Okay? Now, how does your experience, your past experience, and of course your experience would be past or you wouldn't have any experience, but how does your background, your experience, help you becoming a member / president of the school board?
Well,
somewhere in there's a question.
Yeah. Well, you know, I just think I've worked in a lot of different settings, both union and non-union settings, you know, the ones that I mentioned. But I also worked for a small internet firm that was not unionized, for example. And I worked for AT&T for a little while, many years ago. So I think I have the advantage of seeing both perspectives, and especially some of the advantages that the union has given. You know, like right now, I'm an adjunct instructor on staff at the university, and we're not unionized. And we basically have no protections there. While I was at Minskew, there were. You know, we were guaranteed a certain amount of professional development and so forth there. And here we're not. And it's not that the university doesn't treat me well, but there could be that potential if they wanted to. So I've been able to see both sides and some of those advantages. Yeah.
Okay. You just partially answered my next question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But you have taught at the university level, and you currently are teaching at the university level. Why do faculty and instructors in post-secondary education need unions?
Yeah, one was the example I just gave. For
Yep.
example, giving benefits that are really, I think, important for faculty to have. Now, it really depends on what level of faculty you are. Like, if you're tenured as a faculty member, you have a lot of protections already. And I could see them validly saying, well, I probably don't need a union because he has these protections. But until you get tenure, you are really quite vulnerable, actually, up until that 7-year mark when you should get tenure if you get it. Same thing with all adjunct instructors. So I think it's important that they have some kind of at least due process rights and some benefits that, you know, a union could help them obtain. And, you know, for those who are tenured, you know, there is some advantage certainly to bargaining together to, you know, improve your salary position. UW is actually quite low nationally in terms of salary for faculty now, and I think a union would help that aspect of it. So, but especially those, to me, the most important thing about unions isn't really the pay, it isn't really the benefits, it's those due process rights, it's those worker conditions that I think are really important.
Now, are you familiar with an organization called Teachers for America?
Yes. I mean, I'm not an expert on it, but I've read about them.
Well, I'm a little familiar with it, but I think you're a lot more familiar with it than I am. So, would you please describe your concerns or criticisms about Teachers for America?
Yeah, well, you know, the little I know about is basically, you know, their model is basically a charter school model. They promote charter schools, and that's sort of the corporate reform model. And they recruit brand new teachers, college students right out of school. You know, they do a quick like 5-week camp for them, and they send them in the classroom essentially to these charter schools that tend to be in urban or poor urban schools. And you know, the idea I think is that these teachers are excited, they're young, they have lots of energy, and there may be some truth to that. But the thing is, the evidence shows that they burn out. You know, within 3 years, they have like an 80% loss rate or something. And I just would argue that that's not good for the teachers, and it's not good for the students in terms of education. And the little research that I've read about that is that that model doesn't work any better than the standard, you know, model of training teachers and giving them longevity in the schools to improve. So that's about the amount I know about it. It doesn't sound like a real promising model to use.
No, it doesn't. One last question. Charter schools.
Mm-hmm.
Some people believe that charter schools simply are ineffective.
Mm-hmm.
And we shouldn't support charter schools at all. Some people say that that charter schools are simply wonderful without exception.
Mm-hmm.
And some people believe that some charter schools, depending on the type of the charter school, are good for education.
Mm-hmm.
Which camp do you fall into?
I'm in the middle camp. There's...
Not going to take any chances, huh?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I wasn't elected for nothing. Yeah.
No, you were nominated. You weren't elected now.
Well, I mean for school board. But anyhow, really, think of charter schools as public or private, right? Public charter schools are instrumentalities of school districts, and private, they could be created in any number of ways. But the thing about public charter schools, they're approved by the school boards that the district they're in. And they have, the goal there is that they provide innovative ideas to the school district, and there's that interaction to help both. And, there's got to be this cooperative relationship with them. And that's really important in education in general, within a school and between schools, that there's this cooperative teamwork kind of attitude. I think with the private charter schools, it's like that thought there is that they're going to be competitors to the public schools. And I think that's detrimental to education. We're going to take resources for that one away from this one, and they'll take some students, but maybe not all, from this school. And I think that's just not good for education. And I think if you see a lot of those private schools, they're private also in the sense of corporate. And they're out for a profit rather than necessarily educating every single student, which is our goal in the public schools.
I was hoping you'd bring that up. Point blank, public schools have to take all students.
Right.
Charter schools can be selective, period. That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Now, a little bit about yourself.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
We saved the best for last. Seriously. You have a PhD.
Right.
Mathematics. Okay, and where did you get your PhD in?
University of Vermont.
Uh-huh.
So I had gotten my master's at University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and then I worked for a while. I worked as a programmer for a long time, a computer programmer. Even did a little bit of consulting, and with my wife's job, we eventually ended up in Vermont at some point. I worked there as a programmer, and then I decided, I'm going to finish that PhD, and went back to school there. So it's kind of an older graduate for a mathematics PhD.
Now, because you're president of the school board and you've got a degree in mathematics, does that help when you're trying to figure out a budget?
Well, I think just the thought process of being more analytical.
Mm-hmm.
The kind of budget numbers it's more like accounting than it is mathematics. But I think just the fact that being reasonably good at mathematics, usually you have to be analytical, you have to be organized oftentimes too, and approach problems. And so I bring that organizational attitude toward the job. So I think that helps a lot.
Okay. Now, are there any questions that you wish I could have asked, or anything else that you would like to add? Whatever you want to talk about. Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I'm just hoping moving forward here in our school district that, our district, I think, has a good history of working together. The school board and unions and employees, whether unions or not, and administration. And I hope we can continue doing that. And the second thing is, and I think we will, I feel like we have a good team, school board, administration, and employees. And I hope from the other side that the state will see the value in public schools and support us like we need. So I'd just like to leave it with that. That's going to be so important for us.
Okay, and that's it?
All right, great. Thanks.
Okay, that's it for today. My thanks to Rich. Thank you, Rich.
Yeah.
And, of course, my thanks to the audience for watching us. And that's it.
Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.